Nice to have everybody here today. We are talking prototyping today. And I'm actually going to open, not because it's necessarily a prototyping video, but it is a great example of taking community voice into account and really rethinking your institution based on the voice of the community and the diversity that is in the community. And so I'm going to share a video. And let me just set this up, because I'm just going to play kind of a 2 or 3 minutes in the middle of it. But this is a small museum in Portland in Washington State. And they have traditionally been a museum of artifacts of the settlers who came to that region. And what they ran into was a situation where they were down to about 12 members. And they became totally irrelevant to the community, basically. And so what they did is they got 2 new executive directors, and we're going to hear from them. And they basically invited indigenous voices into the museum to help them tell stories from a different perspective. So that's a little bit of a setup. I'm going to fast forward here to 2:04 as I get it to play. So bear with me, and let me make sure my sound is on. And that is on. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to fast forward.
With big change was needed that started with who was telling the stories at the museum and what stories were being told.
We saw that the result of not trusting communities to be experts of their own cultural knowledge was choking the institution from being able to be engaged with all of this vibrant cultural activity around it. And we just thought, well, if we're going to trust people to be experts in their own perspectives, well, then that seems like the expertise we need behind our exhibitions.
They invited Kalapuyan artist and writer Steph Littleberg-Fogel, who is a member of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, to provide a critique of the museum's long-running exhibition about her people called This Kalapuya Land.
And that's also a part of this talk today.
Working with scholar and fellow Grand Ronde member David Lewis, Fogel annotated and corrected the exhibition's panels to reflect the Kalapuyan people's views and experiences. She presented the revised panels along with a diverse collection of works from 17 Native artists in a new exhibition called This is Kalapuyan Land.
We learned so much from that process and how it was received by the community about listening and how to act listening as an institution. After that, we were able to create more of a formal process. So we have a panel of invited community members who review applications from an open call to the community for proposals for exhibitions.
Handing over curating responsibilities to the community was one big change in 2019. Another was a museum rebrand.
When looking for a new name that reflected the museum's commitment to diverse storytelling, they found inspiration at a historic site only a few miles away.
One remains, but for hundreds of years, 5 majestic oak trees claimed this spot, now surrounded by commercial buildings. It was an important gathering spot for the Kalapuyan people and others.
This grove of trees, they have bared witness to all kinds of things for hundreds of years prior to settlement. And so the idea of the museum name changing to Five Oaks Museum, it was a way for us to stay extremely open-ended.
Okay, so let me turn that down. So that's just a small clip of the overall video, and we'll be posting the video in the Catalyst Club. But what you see, and let me just make sure that you see me. There we go. So that case of the Five Oaks Museum in Portland is a great example of inviting the community in to help create the content of your institution, to change its culture, to be more inclusive in the community. And I just love it because one of the first things they did was have the people they invited in correct the exhibit about the native lands. So how cool is that? Kind of a lot of, I think I'm inspired by it because people have a lot of, those leaders had bravery in doing that and has just created a real growth for their institution in the community. So hope you enjoyed that. And this week is about learning more about the potential for your ideas or your solution by creating a prototype. And so how can we learn more about the potential of your idea? You know, the key here is you want to see how it might work in real life before you go to the investment to make it actually real. And it doesn't exist yet. And so how can you get the feel for its potential value? Well, what's cool is you can use some really simple techniques and some role playing. You can give your solution, you can give your solution a try and see how it might work. So this is the idea of prototyping. Oops. So I want to play another video, and I'm going to try to get my switching down here better. But I'm going to play another video. This is just a short 2 or 3 minute video of her describing kind of the value of prototyping and the 3 types of prototypes you can make. So this is just a nice orientation.
Hi, my name is Erica. So what we now have done is we've come up with our general ideas for solutions to this problem that we've identified. And now it's time to start to test these ideas. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to build something called a prototype. So a prototype is just a really rough representation of these ideas. The reason why we want a prototype is we don't want to waste too much time and too much money going down a certain solution path before we know whether or not people actually are excited about this solution. So we want to build something as quickly and as cheaply as possible in order to start to test these solutions. So a really good prototype is made in a really rough way and also just communicates our basic solution. So there are 3 types of prototypes that we're going to talk about today. There's the storyboard, the role play, and the works like feels like prototype. So a storyboard is basically just a collection of images that tells the story of what your solution looks like. So you might consider using a storyboard if you're going to create a solution that is intangible or some sort of experience. A role play is exactly what it sounds like. Basically what you do is you create some rough props. You get your team together, assign each other roles, act out what your solution might look like and what the interactions between the people might look and feel like as well. So the last type, the works like feels like, is usually for physical products, but you can use it in other places as well. And so basically you're just making a really rough representation or mock-up. This prototype will probably work like or feel like your prototype, but won't actually be the functioning thing.
Okay, so that's a real simple overview of what prototyping is all about. And I think what you can take away from that is that it can be rough, it can be fast, it can be down and dirty. So this is not about high fidelity things. It's about getting you to make things that can help you simulate some aspect of your idea to get it in front of other people to try and for additional feedback. So just think about that. Think about the notion of, I can describe a prototype with my words, and somebody will go, oh, that's pretty interesting. Whether they're thinking what I just described and whether they're thinking what I'm thinking it is, there's a lot of debate there, right? There's probably a big lost in translation. I can draw a picture of it, and now I can show you something with a picture, and that helps. That's like, oh, I didn't know you were thinking about that. That's interesting. And you're using a visual reference. Well, a prototype brings it to life in that somebody can actually experience it. So you're making something that somebody can try. That's the key aspect of it. Okay, so she mentioned here, I'm just going to show some examples of these kinds of rough prototypes. So this is a storyboard, and you guys created a storyboard in the design dash. And that was part of the way we prototyped within Miro what a new experience could be like. This is role-playing. This is, I believe, some healthcare role-playing, and maybe people attending to houseless persons. This is a fun image. This is what we call a Wizard of Oz prototype. And the reason we call it a Wizard of Oz prototype is that some aspects of the system are just being run by one of the people on the team. So you can actually take anybody through a service, a computer interaction, a phone call. You can do that all just by having a person on the team know what the protocol is, and then have users come in and try to use it, right? And you set some context that here's what we're doing today. We want you to give this interface a try. And yes, they're making believe that they're typing on the keyboard and stuff, but all that's fine. You're trying to get a sense of the value of the service, not the feel of the keyboard, for example. This is a great prototype. It's a little blurry because it's a small picture, but this was a team, again, a healthcare team that was looking how best to help people move from hospitalization back home. And there was a checklist, a verbal checklist they used to have. And what they realized is if they made it visual and put it on the wall of the room of the person who's being discharged, they could start taking care of these things and make sure they have them all taken care of before they're discharged and go home. And so it became a visual checklist on the wall that these little cards could go up and down, and you could write on them and turn them around to say that they were done. And they actually prototyped this to try it with real patients. And that's another cool thing here is, you know, we talk about prototyping and making something, and maybe we just try it with our team or somebody else we trust, but the real beauty comes in when you try it in real life with other people. So imagine doing your new service or your new approach and actually delivering it manually before you have a chance to create a whole program around it. That's a prototype, right? Okay. Simple things like maybe it's a mobile tool or a new survey that's going to be filled out on a mobile phone. You can just use sticky notes, cut it out, paste it up on a piece of paper roughly the size of a phone. Again, emphasizing the quick but tangible nature of a prototype. And I'm going to play a little video here of just a fun way when you realize how to get creative with prototyping interfaces. So here you can show a step through of a mobile application. I won't play the whole thing, but the user's just pressing and it's kind of giving you a sense of how it might work. Okay. And I realized I'm not up here for you saying hi. That's not what I wanted. I really ruined this, didn't I? Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to stay here. So thinking through the steps in a process and making those things tangible. And then remember, I made this thing as part of the mindsets of being tangible. And all this is a little graphic I made that I pasted into an existing picture. And so what I was prototyping is, what if Catalyst program was a national program and there was a campaign around the key cities they were targeting to launch in, and they would go up at bus stops or parks or campuses near healthcare and community-based organizations, for example. So again, you can make something feel like it actually exists and then get feedback from people on that idea. Okay, one more video of somebody talking a little bit about the importance of rough, simple, focused prototyping.
I would actually say some of the best designers and some of the best design thinkers came as people who like to make and like to fiddle around with things. to me, it's all about iteration. And in a product design sense, a product can be very low res to just get basic feedback. And in fact, one of the things I suggest when we're working with our staff is do not spend a lot of time refining something. You just want to get the main idea there. What's the main idea you want this product embodiment to convey? It could be it's small, it's compact. It could be, it's got a wide footprint and it looks sturdy. It could be any number of things, but each prototype should just have a main idea, and you're just trying to get something made that conveys that idea. It doesn't have to be perfect. And to me, the key, like getting over that barrier of like, I don't know how to do that, is like, just don't worry about it. There's no risk involved. In fact, if anything, you're taking risk out of the process by trying a very simple thing first, and you always learn lessons from it.
All right, so lots of encouragement for you that you don't have to worry about it. You can give things a try with prototyping, and the amount of learning, and you always learn something from them, is a key point there. Okay, let me, I apologize for having to do this, but I kind of messed things up. There we go. All right, so let me give you a few steps for doing this well. Because there's really lots of different things you could prototype in your project. You don't prototype the whole idea. You just heard how it should be kind of focused and think about one thing that you could bring to life and communicate. So here's how you start planning your prototype. First, figure out what you could make. I have 3 prompts I'm going to share in a second to help you think about your solution in a tangible way versus thinking that, oh, it's a service, so it's intangible. Everything is tangible. Everything has touch points. Everything has interactions. All of that stuff is prototypable. And then you sketch a storyboard. So after these prompts, you sketch a storyboard of a new experience with your solution, showing unique and valuable steps. So, oh, well, we thought about having this thing, and that's when they would get a key interaction from our staff about X, Y, or Z. Here's how we thought about recruiting people differently. So those are the steps that you would put in a prototype, or in a storyboard, sorry. And then choose one of those key experiences, one of those key steps, one of those key aspects that really gets at least a core heart of the idea of doing it a little bit differently with your solution. And then use one or more of the core prototyping strategies, role-playing, mocking something up, creating imagery or a storyboard to show it. Ideally, you're going to try to get these things into the real world that people can experience. Okay, so here are the prompts. Here's the first prompt. The first prompt is, just think if your new solution actually existed, what would exist in the world, right? So this thing couldn't, your solution can't, it doesn't exist now, but if you're doing it, what things would exist in the world? Maybe it's a new environment or a location. Maybe it's new protocols or ways you do things. Maybe it's handouts you give. Maybe it's the tools you use. Or maybe it's the results that people get from it and the way they're able to live or behave as a result of the solution. So think about a world with your solution. What exists? And those types of things you can prototype. Another great way to think about prototyping, and this is the example of the catalyst sign that I made, is how do people find out about this idea? And what you'll notice is every solution has communications around it. So communications to announce it, to describe it, to promote it, to provide help for it. There's lots of communications, and you can prototype those communications. It could be a poster in your facility, just a banner on your organization's website that leads to a landing page that describes the program. It could be sharing it verbally at a gathering or in an email to your list. So there's lots of different ways that things are communicated. It could be a brochure. It could be a video of maybe you talking about the solution that you're sharing with people to try to recruit them into the service. So think about the communications that attract, describe, help, or promote your solution in the community. You can prototype those. And then think about activities. What would you do or your organization do? What do the people do in your organization, and what do the people who are being served do? Those activities are perfect examples for role-playing. So new solutions result in new interactions, new experiences. They have, think about the specific steps in the overall experience, the activities that happen, and even things that happen behind the scenes that might need to be prototyped. Oh, you gave us this information. We come over here and we do this type of analysis, and we check with our other partners, and we're able to bring this back to you as part of our new solution. So any of these things, the communications, the environments, the tools people use, the new activities, the new verbal protocols, or the way you interact with people, they're all prototypable. And if you try those, you're able to get a sense for how the solution would work in the real world. Now, remember your solution map. Your solution map has tons of things that you would do or characteristics that your solution has, and that's a great thing to review for thinking about your prototype before you sketch your storyboard. So if I just go back one and I just take one thing like we're going to host reflective conversations, there we go. Well, I could focus on that and go, well, let me prototype that. Let me recruit 3 or 4 youth who have dropped out of high school, and I'm going to see how a reflective conversation goes. I'll kind of script out the guide, almost like an open-ended interview, but I'm going to prototype one of those. I'll probably videotape it, and I'll hold that reflective conversation with them, and then I would step back from that and go, okay, thank you guys. Okay, now can we talk about what that was like? And kind of do an exit interview of what did you like about this? What didn't work? What would you suggest? Stuff like that. And I get all the feedback from having prototyped one of those ideas in our solution. See how that works? Okay, and I'm going to remind you that you were already doing some storyboards that help you lay out what a experience could be in your Miro boards when we did the design dash. So storyboard in there is fair game. So once you lay out the storyboard, then you want to role play the new experience with a key stakeholder, set up an environment with communications in it, rearrange a room, create a poster communicating the new offering, create a series of screens if there's an instruction set or a tool that somebody uses. You just got to make the things that are in alignment with your solution. And then I just want to suggest, that these things are made rough and ready. You can remake things that already exist. So how to make things, it's not about making everything from scratch. You can modify an existing graphics template. Find a template for a brochure or find a template for a poster and just replace the text in one of the images. And you have a poster announcing your new service or solution. You can paste things into an existing photo or screen grab. So you could go out to the front of your building, take a picture, and then just drop in an image of a new sign announcing a bigger program or whatever it might be, right? You can just modify things that already exist. Or you go to your organization's website, do a screen grab of the website, and then bring that into PowerPoint and just draw in something like the web banner or announcement of the new program. So you could build your poster or storyboard in Miro. You could rearrange a room and do a rough script and perform that service with people. So lots of ways to make things. I'm just trying to not overwhelm you, but encourage you that there's so many different ways you can do what's helpful and useful for you. And then just a really great resource is Canva for the design side of things. Canva has a free account for all nonprofits, so it's free. And what you can see by going here is, you could prototype a t-shirt for all the program participants and maybe what it says or how it creates solidarity among them. Or you can, there's a poster there that you could start with a poster and recreate it. So something like Canva is a great resource, canva.com. And as I mentioned, it's free for nonprofits for prototyping visual things. And it can give you some really great ideas for bringing your solution to life. So why is, just in summary, why is prototyping so valuable? It's a fast and easy way to learn. It brings more clarity to your idea. So this is not just about people giving you feedback, but when you go to make something, you have to decide a bunch of things. You have to create something because you're like, oh, I hadn't thought through that yet. Oh, I hadn't thought through that yet. And it helps push the clarity of your solution as you try to make a prototype. Obviously, others can try it and provide feedback. That's invaluable, as you've seen in just simple feedback that you've gotten from each other in the cohort. Getting feedback on your ideas is always rewarding, refreshing, and inspirational. And it requires interaction. It requires experience to happen, not just thinking. And we do too much of our work thinking inside of our heads and not tangibly out in the world. But your solution is going to exist. It's going to be something that people use, something people interact with, something that creates a new dynamic in the community. So why not prototype that to see how it could be and make it better? It always reveals new information, and it leads to additional ideas. You can start stacking new ideas as you prototype something and people give you feedback. It's like, oh yeah, we could add that to it, or we could subtract that from it. And we don't have to do that because that's just more work and nobody's responding to it. So there's a lot of value that comes from doing this. And finally, it builds momentum. This is one of the funnest things, is you actually make something and people are like, holy cow, you're actually moving forward with that idea. I could see how it could work, and you get this momentum in your project. So that is prototyping and testing your idea.